All right, we'll call the meeting back to order then and resume where we left off at item number 9, matters pertaining to ballot questions for the 2021 municipal general election. Madam City Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This item will look familiar to you. This was held in abeyance until this meeting. The council was concerned about cost estimates regarding the pool facility, both for rehabilitation of the existing facility and cost estimates for a new facility. So the item was held to give our consultant that we've retained time to provide those estimates. We currently still do not have those estimates, but we do recommend that council go move forward with these items today because we have deadlines with the county that we need to meet with regard to ballot questions. We have to recruit committee members to form the pro and con arguments for the ballot question. And so adopting this question today would allow the staff to put that process in motion so we can have those ballot questions ready to go when there are estimates available. We do anticipate estimates will be available in March and April respectively for the new and rehabilitated facility. So there's still time to have those estimates available before the election. With that, I want to do a brief overview of the ballot questions. Resolution 7195 would place a ballot question on the 2021 June municipal general election ballot, requesting voter approval to use $7 million from the Capital Improvement Fund as a one-time appropriation for the purpose of funding a aquatic center. Resolution 7196 would place a question on the 2021 June municipal general election ballot, requesting voter approval to annually transfer $1 million per year from the Capital Improvement Fund to a pool reserve fund for the purpose of funding an aquatic center. And this transfer would sunset by December 31st, 2031, or at such time construction of the aquatic center is completed, whichever comes first. Resolution 7197 would place a question on the 2021 June municipal general election ballot, requesting voter approval to reclassify the formula for the proceeds of the land sale of lands adjacent to Boulder Creek Golf Club known as Track 350, with 10% to be used for public safety and 90% to be used for an aquatic center. The original ballot question for Track 350 had dedicated 90% of the funds towards the Boulder Creek Golf Course municipal bonds and other capital debt. The Boulder Creek municipal bonds have been paid off, and so this resolution or this ballot question would just seek voter approval to reappropriate that 90% toward the aquatic center. And the ballot questions are required in order for the city, in order to spend monies from the Capital Improvement Fund. Our Boulder City Charter requires voter approval of any expenditure from that fund. And the expenditures from the fund are a part of the city's a 5-step savings plan toward funding a swimming pool or aquatic center. The brief overview of the plan. First, a generous $1.3 million donation was made for the aquatic center. The second step in the plan, city staff recommends a ballot question to seek voter approval to utilize the proceeds from the sale of Track 350. The third step in the plan, city staff would recommend that the voters be asked to approve a one-time appropriation from the Capital Improvement Fund in the amount of $7 million as additional seed money for the aquatic center swimming pool facility. The fourth step, if the voters approve the voters approve the proceeds of the land sale of Track 350 and the one-time appropriation of $7 million, then city staff would recommend that the council consider an ordinance to pledge excess revenues over expenditures for the 4 fiscal years following approval of the project toward the aquatic center or swimming pool facility. Fifth and the final step of the plan would be another ballot question to approve the remaining fund balance to be expended from the capital improvement fund. In addition to that, staff is also considering a private placement bond to help fund the facility. A private placement bond, unlike a general obligation bond, is not backed by property tax. Nevertheless, it would still require voter approval because Boulder City ordinances require any debt to be approved by the voters. So this fifth and final step would be an additional ballot question for perhaps a November 2022 ballot that would, at that time, we'd have a better idea really of what funding is needed once we know what the sale of Track 350 brings in, and once we know what our, whether we pass an ordinance pledging excess revenues, and we'll have forecasts for that. So that would just give us a better idea at that time, really, what is left over, what's needed. And so, in summary, with that 5-step plan, we are recommending that the City Council move forward with 2 out of the 3 ballot questions rather than all 3. Specifically, we would recommend that the City Council approve Resolution 7195, which would approve $7 million one-time appropriation from the Capital Improvement Fund for the Aquatic Center swimming pool facility, and Resolution 7197, which would reappropriate the proceeds of the sale of Track 350, again towards the Aquatic Center swimming pool facility. In addition, for your consideration, we presented this item to the Pool Ad Hoc Committee with the same recommendation. The Pool Ad Hoc Committee recommended that the City Council go forward with the 2 ballot questions I just referenced rather than 3. And the Pool Ad Hoc Committee also recommended that the Council reconsider the use of the name Aquatic Center in the ballot question, as they felt it didn't describe the project that the community sought. It was better described as a swimming pool or something along those lines. Of course, there are legal considerations when we're drafting these ballot questions to make sure that the language is broad enough to encompass not just a swimming pool, but all of the fixtures, equipment, and appurtenances there too. And so I have provided you on the dais with an amended ballot question that would change the use of the term Aquatic Center to Swimming Pool Recreational Project. In addition, the Pool Ad Hoc Committee also recommended the Council discuss whether the cost estimate for the pool should be included within the digest of the ballot question. As you can see here, I have a placeholder for the cost estimate. Staff would recommend that the cost estimate not be placed in the ballot question for the simple fact that even if we have a cost estimate for the facility, it's not guaranteed that will be the exact price. And so it's more appropriate really for the cost estimates to be distributed to the public and disseminated to the public in other ways, such as on the city website, etc. So we would recommend omitting the placeholder for the cost estimate from the ballot question. So 3 things for your consideration, whether to approve the ballot questions at all, obviously, and then again, staff would recommend moving forward with Resolution 7195 and 7197. And additionally, Council should consider whether to change the term Aquatic Center to Swimming Pool Recreational Project. And thirdly, consider whether a cost estimate should be included within the digest. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just by way of clarification, on the Track 350 land, that was originally approved for sale, I believe, in 2010. And the voters had approved the sale with the proceeds going to payment of debt incurred for the construction of Boulder Creek Golf Course and 10% to public safety, is my recollection.
That's correct.
Okay, so this question then would, well, the debt for Boulder Creek Golf Course was paid off from other sources. The attempt to sell the land on track 350 around the golf course received no bidders when it went out a couple years ago. So currently there is a proposal being put together that would again ask for that land to be sold, or at least proposals from developers how they would like to develop the land.
Yes, and the city's currently seeking requests for interest on track 350 as of right now.
All right. And I think most importantly, you know, myself and Councilmember Adams have been working on this pool ad hoc committee along with 7 residents to come up with a plan. So the project has been scaled back. We still need a determination as to whether repairs versus replacement are the better way to go, and we expect that information within the next month and a half. The committee has, as I said, scaled the project back from what was being proposed before, so that we are pretty much going with just the swimming pool and not something more than that. But I think more importantly to point out is there would be no tax increase using these methods that you've described if these ballot questions are approved, and potentially another ballot question would be needed in 2022. The intent is there would be no increase in property taxes at any time for this project.
That's correct, Mayor. Property tax increases are not a part of the city's savings plan for the pool.
All right, and the primary funding for our capital improvement fund, I believe, is the amount that the city collects in revenue from the lease of land, primarily the solar fields.
I don't know that if it's primarily the solar leases that fund the capital improvement fund, but I can say that the disposition of all land sales leases are deposited into the capital improvement fund.
Okay. All right. So that's just a little bit of history on it. Councilmember Adams, you're also on that ad hoc committee. Anything you would like to add?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hello, is this thing on? Yeah, so I think it's important when we look back and you know, when we as the ad hoc committee, or not ad hoc, but I guess it is pool ad hoc committee got together, you know, one of the things that we heard a lot from the residents regarding the concerns and why those questions failed was, number one, you know, $40 million for bond, you know, the price tag wasn't right for the city our size. The potential for increases on taxes certainly wasn't very palatable. But then there was also the concern that the language wasn't specific enough to just an aquatic facility, but for any recreational purpose at all. I think that the questions that have been put forward here really address a lot of those issues. You know, what these questions do is they're asking for voter authorization to use funds that are either already there or may soon be there based off of land sales that are made. And so I think it's really important. I know we've all been wanting and waiting for these estimates to come in, and I'm happy to hear that they will be coming in soon, and that we'll have them all ready for the residents to have in their hands and to look at when considering these questions about whether it's appropriate for us to move forward or not. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, the city needs to address the failing infrastructure at the pool, and that is going to cost us money, whether we rehabilitate or move towards a new one. And so I think this is a really appropriate way that addresses some of the issues. Like I said, it identifies funds that are already there for us to look at, and it's really going out to the voters and asking them if this is more of an appropriate way to address the needs of the swimming pool than maybe perhaps the previous question. So in my opinion, I think it's appropriate for us to move forward with these, because I think every time we, you know, each delay, you know, waiting for the next election, you know, the problems at the pool will continue to compound. And I think at the very least, we need to get some direction from the community at this point, whether this is an appropriate step to address those concerns or not. So those are my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about the putting a cost estimate, and I think either way is fine. However, what appeared to happen last time around was it started at like maybe 23, 26, then it was 28, but probably 32, and then it was up to 36, and then people were talking about a pool that was going to cost $40 million. And part of me thinks that it would be good to have a set amount or an estimate amount so that people would have a frame of reference, because it was very easy for those numbers to move up and down depending on the reason at the time. And so, but I do understand the reason for not putting it in there and eventually putting it forward. However, I would think that the first question people are going to ask is, how much is this going to cost? So there may need to be an answer in there somewhere. That's it. Thank you.
To follow up on that, would it be possible, I mean, the recommendation from you is to not include that in the digest because we don't know it at this point, but could that information be included in the arguments for and against passage of the ballot questions?
Yes, so the city provides the committee members materials to draft their questions. They could certainly incorporate it in their arguments.
All right. And also, since we have not received these final estimates yet, the consultant that is working on it, you know, they've been given an idea of what we want based on all the discussions from the committee. Let's say the number comes in a way that we don't. Is there still a possibility to pull these questions back if the city council determines that it's not appropriate?
Yes, Mayor, the city council could reconsider the resolutions and repeal the resolutions at a later time before the election.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do think that the Aquatic Center, changing it to swimming pool recreational project, is a little bit easier to understand. And I know before people were saying Aquatic Center, what does that mean? Does this mean this big Taj Mahal or whatever? So I think this is a little bit more specific. I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
Councilmember Folda?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just want to say that just this week there was a rumor going around that we were selling the golf course to purchase a new pool. And so I just, there are, it's unfortunate that rumors travel faster than facts. And so to reiterate, I think it's important for people to understand that, yes, this land sale was approved by voters, one. Two, the debt that it was proposed to go to is no longer there. And three, that, we are a pay-as-you-go city, and so we either have to build up the funds for an expense like this, or, the option was to take out bonds. And that was what was proposed earlier, was to take out bonds that could have the potential to increase property taxes. This is a different model in which we will save up that money and without touching anyone's property taxes, and that this land sale would benefit the whole city. I know at one time it was proposed to sell the land to bury the electric lines on the lakeside, and I think this is a good source of use if that happens, that the land sale of Track 350 can benefit the improvement of our city as a whole. So I think we have a lot to, as a council, to clarify for the community what's going on. And I think it is important to have a number somewhere out there that they can say, this is the number. With the understanding that that number could change slightly and keep it worded as an estimate, because of this is, a several year project. It's not going to be, it could change with the increase of design and construction increases. So I think the way that it's been changed is good and well worded, and it addresses a lot of the issues that came up with the last election of the swimming pool. So.
Thank you. And, you know, I would certainly add to that too about the rumor thing. You know, this ad hoc committee was created months ago, or even prior to the pandemic. Folks can access the minutes from those meetings, the video tape from those meetings. Things like selling the golf course itself have never been discussed, have never been considered, are not in any way, shape, or form part of this question whatsoever. It's the vacant land surrounding the Boulder Creek Golf Course that's known as Track 350, that was previously approved for sale in 2010, received no offers. In the meantime, the debt for the golf course was paid off from other funds. So, you know, once again, we see the facts being left behind, but the record is out there clearly that what the ad hoc pool committee has been discussing is a way to finance this project, and as Councilmember Folda pointed out, it will take several years, but that it would not be a financial burden, it would not be a tax increase, and certainly there's no mention of selling a golf course in order to do this. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
I did have one question with regards to the change for the swimming pool recreational project. You know, there has been some discussion about, you know, whether or not we can maintain the current, you know, racquetball courts that are there, you know, or whether it would be appropriate to get new ones. Would something like that be included in a swimming pool recreation project, or?
Well, the term swimming pool modifies the term recreational project. The term recreational project is broadly defined in NRS 68 to include things like squash courts, racquetball courts, even a golf course. So I think that's just the primary use of the project would have to be a swimming pool. I think if it was, you know, ancillary, it could be used, you know, if it's a swimming pool recreational project. So as long as the primary use is the swimming pool, I don't think it would preclude additional recreational facilities.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, in trying to, you know, see what is still usable there, if, you know, and this is all, you know, even if, you know, we just go with rehabilitation versus construction of a new facility entirely, I just want to make sure that it's not, you know, it's still broad enough that we are, you know, can move forward in a way with a project we're comfortable with, but not so narrow that, you know, we can just dig a hole in the ground and that's it. So I appreciate the attention to the detail on that. Thank you.
And that reminds me also of a couple of other items that the committee has been talking about. You know, we need to keep in mind that this pool is now more than 40 years old. It's already had repairs. The equipment there, filtration systems, are way out of date. If projects are done to rehabilitate the pool, equipment like that probably would need to be replaced. The discussion is only to have anything new built at Broadbent Park where the existing pool is now. One of the ideas or criteria that was asked of the consultant was to try and find a way to keep the existing pool open if a new structure were to be built, and as Councilmember Adams noted, to try and reuse whatever of the existing complex that would be possible or feasible. So I think we're trying to be as frugal as we can, even though we're dealing with a facility that's more than 40 years old and has served this community very well over that period of time, but is more than showing its age at this point. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I have one more, just in general, just curious what council's thoughts are with regards to the placeholder for the cost estimates in there, whether or not it would be appropriate to have those in the questions, in the digest, I should say, or not. Part of me is concerned, is worried that it might confuse what the questions are really asking. You know, again, we're not, you know, when you say it might, you know, estimated to be $20 million, and then we're just asking for $7 million, you know, it might start to generate questions that's not really where these questions are going. That these questions really are about identifying or authorizing funds that exist or may exist soon. So that's where I'm at. I'm not necessarily sure that it's appropriate when we know that we will have them together and can have all of that information put together for the residents. So I'm not sure that's necessary, but I did want to just make sure we had that conversation before we move forward.
Anyone else have thoughts on inclusion of that amount or not including it per staff recommendation? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councilman Adams brings up a point because each one of these is a separate piece of a whole picture, and the digest does not address those different pieces, but just the sole question. Could that be something that is added into arguments for and against, that that this is a separate, or does this need to be in the several steps? Could they be included in the digest, or would that need to be separate?
Well, the role of the digest is to explain what the question does. If you include, all of the background material, it will get really convoluted. That's really more appropriate for the arguments. So.
Any other questions or comments regarding that part of it? Any other portions of it? Again, the recommendation is to use a name that's more, what the committee felt anyway, was more appropriate for this type of facility rather than conjuring up ideas that it's going to be way more than what the city may be able to afford. Councilmember Folda?
No, I agree to the new wording. It falls in line with NRS, and I think it is clear that we're trying to attempt to make a swimming pool. When it was recreation facility, it was very open-ended, or aquatic center, very open-ended to what is going to be involved in that. Where swimming pool would just be that. So I would think it would be good to have that new wording, keep it in line with NRS, and then just for a suggestion to have the estimate and have the different step process in the arguments for and against.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone wishing to make a motion then?
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 7195 as it's been presented, except excluding the placeholder for the estimates.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we have two other questions. Staff is recommending that the Resolution 7196 not go forward at this time. Is there anyone wishing to make a motion on that resolution? That would then bring us to Resolution 7197 regarding the sale of land known as Tract 350.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 7197 as presented, except with the exclusion of the placeholder for the estimate.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Madam City Attorney. All right, that brings us then to agenda item number 10, agenda item to consider the position of the city clerk. I have asked for this item tonight because I believe there's an important need to discuss the performance and competence of the city clerk. The City Charter of Boulder City provides for the City Council to appoint or remove 4 officials with or without cause by a majority vote of the council members. Those 4 officials are the City Clerk, the Municipal Judge, the City Attorney, and the City Manager. The Charter is clear that all of these officials serve indefinite terms, meaning the positions may be filled or the officials may be removed by a majority vote of the council at any time. The contract of the City Clerk is clear that employment is on an at-will basis. Changes in employment status do not require specific reasons for action to be taken. I do not have confidence that Ms. Crum is performing the duties and obligations that are required of the position in a competent manner. The competence of the City Clerk to provide support to this council, individual members of the council, city government, and the community as a whole is deficient in significant ways. Actions by Ms. Crum have placed financial burdens on the residents of this community and have unnecessarily exposed the residents of Boulder City to financial risk. Statements and challenges made to actions of the City Council or its members must be based on law. When the challenges are stated to carry the weight of law, but in fact are not based on the law, the government and the residents of this city are not well served. My request for this discussion is not based on a single issue. The request is based on a pattern of actions over a course of several years and in multiple situations. Ms. Crum has failed in important ways to serve the council, the city government, and the community repeatedly. These are not my personal opinions. These are the results of actions by Ms. Crum that have repeatedly been shown to contradict the laws and ethics of the city and the state, as is required of a person serving in such a position. I have asked to have several documents included in the materials for the agenda for this evening. Some of these documents are lengthy, but the materials are intended to provide some background for the public and the council to have information available to them. One of my first experiences with Ms. Crum was when I was a member of the City Historic Preservation Committee. The reaction from Ms. Crum to an item I had requested to be included on a committee agenda became indicative of repeated methods for misstating the open meeting law to influence the work of members to move forward with their goals. Following the proper discussion of an issue by the committee at a meeting that complied with all aspects of the open meeting law, I had prepared research on an issue. I forwarded my research to the city person who was designated as the liaison for the committee. I included the chair of the committee with a copy of the message and the materials. The city staff person later informed me that the clerk needed to speak with me about my actions, which were stated to be inappropriate. I was a citizen volunteer on a committee recognized by the city in a role to provide assistance to the city council. I went to speak with Ms. Crum. She sternly informed me that I was not to communicate with other committee members, as doing so was a violation of the open meeting law for members to communicate with one another. That statement was false then, and it is false now. There is no intention in the open meeting law to prevent members from providing information to other members when no deliberation or decision-making is intended or occurs. It was completely appropriate and well within the open meeting law to have provided a copy of the information I had researched to the chair of the committee. There was no deliberation of a majority of the committee that could have occurred by doing so. It was clear to me that the absurd scolding was simply an attempt to limit functions of the committee. The open meeting law rightfully prohibits a majority of a committee, commission, or this council from deliberating or determining decisions outside of public meetings for items expected to be discussed at public meetings. It became clear to me that the intent was just to shut down any cooperation or contact by members. That is not the intent of the law. It is false, and it places the city staff in the position of dictating actions of independent bodies to carry out their responsibilities. Again, that is not the intent of the law. The open meeting law is an important law that provides for the public to observe the deliberations and decisions of public bodies such as this city council. It is not a tool to be used by city staff to quash actions of this council by staff providing erroneous information. Misleading statements and vague recommendations by city staff on issues that directly involve matters related to their employment contracts are at least questionable. I have included an open meeting law complaint filed by former City Council member Peggy Levitt in December of 2019 as attachment 11 regarding an agenda item I had requested. This complaint relies on information provided by Ms. Crum and in a manner that her statements were accurately reflecting state law. The statements by Ms. Crum were intended to alter or eliminate the agenda item I was requesting. The agenda item was to provide for the City Council to employ a special legal counsel to review the contracts of the 4 appointed officials defined in the city charter. The city clerk being one of those appointed officials whose contract was proposed to be reviewed. In attachment number 14, the Office of the Attorney General responded to the numerous allegations in the December 2019 complaint with an opinion that found there were no violations of the law. The opinion of the Attorney General Office found that the issues Ms. Crum had labeled as violations were not violations, but were in fact appropriate actions that I had taken. The complaint filed in December 2019 was lengthy and required responses that were detailed and accurate. Attachment number 12 is the weak response offered by the former city attorney. The response essentially is, let the record speak for itself. The timing of the complaint from Peggy Levitt and the forwarding of the complaint to members of this council occurred around the Christmas and New Year holidays. That resulted in a shortened period of time to prepare an adequate response. My belief was that any response to the December 2019 complaint from the appointed officials whose contracts were being asked to be reviewed would not be accurate or complete. My belief was that the complaint and the response were being choreographed to result in violations being found. Based on that belief, I again requested an agenda item for the council to retain an independent special counsel for legal advice to respond to the December 2019 complaint. Attachment number 17 is the city charter language that clearly provides the city council to the ability to retain independent special counsel for legal advice. That request for special counsel resulted in a meeting being requested by former city manager Al Noyola on January 7th, 2020. At the outset of the meeting, the manager had requested with me Ms. Crum, and then City Attorney Stephen Morris also showed up. Attachment number 18 is the transcript of that meeting, where Ms. Crum repeatedly makes statements that are intended to prevent my request from going forward to have independent counsel be retained to answer the allegations in the open meeting law complaint. There is no mystery as to why I recorded this meeting. It was clear to me that any meeting to discuss this issue that would need to be recorded to substantiate the statements that were likely to be made. In that meeting, Ms. Crum refers to the rules of procedure for the City Council. These rules are included as attachment number 20 in the packet. These rules specifically state the mayor may call a special meeting. The rules also clearly state council members may add items to council agendas if deemed necessary and an emergency in nature. Ms. Crum cites these rules as why the agenda item could not be included. Responding to a violation of the open meeting law in an appropriate manner when the delivery of the complaint had been delayed by many days is such an emergency in the interest of the public and the integrity of the City Council and its members. I requested the agenda item more than a week in advance of the next council meeting to consider retaining a special counsel for legal advice to respond to that complaint. Ms. Crum would not move forward with the request. The request for the meeting is detailed in attachment number 16. The statements being made that they were only there to help me were belied by the fact that I did ask what could be done regarding the wording of the agenda item. No answer was ever received. The refusal of these appointed officials to move forward with my request forced me to retain an independent attorney for legal advice at my own expense to provide a response to the complaint filed by former council member Peggy Levitt. This resulted in me being forced to personally pay legal fees in the thousands of dollars for an issue that was clearly a direct result of my official duties and position as mayor. In fact, I had informed the city attorney that he was directed not to respond on my behalf when it became so clear that any such response would result in the failure to provide accurate and complete information to the Attorney General. The personal attorney I retained also responded on behalf of Councilmember Tracy Folda, as she was similarly singled out in the complaint. I have included the response that my personal attorney, Noah Allison, prepared on very short notice as attachment number 13. I would encourage the public to review the appropriate response prepared by Mr. Allison in attachment 13 and compared to the weak and unresponsive answer prepared and submitted by appointed officials in attachment number 12. Then please review the opinion from the Office of the Attorney General in attachment number 14 that rejected all of the allegations in the December 2019 complaint. The Attorney General opinion repeatedly cites the response that I was forced to pay for personally because Ms. Crum would not move forward with the appropriate request for an agenda item to be discussed by the City Council. Ms. Crum failed in her duties to follow established procedures for a matter that was directly related to her employment contract. The language in the city charter is clear that it is up to the City Council to determine when an independent special counsel is needed for legal advice. The issue with the open meeting law complaint filed in December 2019 is far from an isolated incident with regard to actions by Ms. Crum. I began by noting the actions of the clerk reacting to an agenda item I had requested when I was a member of the City Historic Preservation Committee. During the interview and hiring for the now former city attorney, Ms. Crum refused to provide the resumes of the final candidates in response to requests from several members of the public. That resulted in several open meeting law complaints being filed. The Office of the Attorney General found these complaints were valid and imposed directives on the City Council to acknowledge the failures to abide by the requirements of the open meeting law. The opinion of the Attorney General Office is attachment number 19 in those complaints. The opinion is clear that the resumes of the candidates were public records to be provided to the public. There is additional information that is not included in the response from appointed officials to that complaint. A day prior to the City Council meeting, I was contacted by a resident requesting copies of the resumes. In response to that request, I contacted Ms. Crum and advised I would scan the paper copies I had been given and email these to the resident. Ms. Crum pleaded that I not do so, as she was waiting for a call back from the Attorney General office to determine if the resumes were public records. Ms. Crum stated she would get back to me soon. She did not. A quick review of the interview and hiring processes that occur all around Nevada would have shown resumes of candidates are to be made available to the public. The Attorney General opinion states that the actions were the result of Ms. Crum's refusal to provide the resumes. Ms. Crum even took the opportunity to give the appearance of stepping out of her role as city clerk during the city meeting to offer a robust endorsement of one of the candidates, Stephen Morris, for the position of city attorney during public comment. Mr. Morris is now being the former city attorney. The open meeting law, however, holds the governing body responsible for such failures. The clerk does not sustain any penalty for her actions in the form of actions by the Attorney General. The issue of resumes being public records was clear and could have easily been resolved. Ms. Crum chose to refuse providing the information until the last minute. The Office of the Attorney General did not find that late action to comply with the requirements of the open meeting law. I am sure there will be people that will say that the actions I have included here are not consequential, that everyone makes mistakes and let's just move on. Such statements would miss the important point of the issues where actions are taken and the results of those actions. The open meeting law is the guarantee of government to be responsible to our citizens. It is not to be used to block the right of citizens to have information made available to them. The law is not to be used to block or divert actions of this council or the commissions and committees reporting to this council. Excuse me. While these actions by Ms. Crum are among the most egregious examples of serious issues with her competence and performance, they are not the only examples. As a more recent example, I have included attachment number 21. This is an email I sent to Ms. Crum regarding an issue with a required form of an agenda for a council meeting on May 12, 2020. The agenda for the meeting did not contain the required notices of emergency directives for attendance and public comment at the meeting. My concern with the improper notice of a council meeting had been made known to the clerk and other senior staff the day before the meeting. However, Ms. Crum and other city staff had not responded to my concern prior to the meeting. When I again raised the issue in an email, there was no response. It was not until I informed Ms. Crum that I would raise the concern before the meeting began that a response was received. And that response was the meeting needed to be canceled due to the improper notice. Just last week, Ms. Crum forwarded a request for public records to me 9 days after the request was received by the city. The law requires, in most instances, that such requests be responded to within 5 days. Such delays put the city at risk for violations of the public records law. The delay in forwarding the request for records is not in the interest of the community. The charter of this city provides the council with the ability to appoint officials willing to support the lawful policies of the council and not their own views and opinions. When differences in viewpoints arise, it is not appropriate for Ms. Crum to scold a member for their vote and refuse to recognize the chair when calling for proper decorum during a council meeting. Professionalism is a necessary competence in any appointed official. Being disrespectful occurs in various ways. Providing misleading information to council members is also being disrespectful and lacking in professionalism. Refusing to comply with lawful requests from council members is not acceptable, especially when the issues directly relate to employment contracts for that individual. The issues I have mentioned are in no way a complete accounting of actions by Ms. Crum that are contrary to good public policy and the functioning of city government. At this time, I would ask if there are other members of council wishing to discuss the agenda item. Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. When I first heard of the agenda item to discuss the conduct of the city clerk and her potential termination, my stomach sank. The potential of losing so much institutional knowledge weighed heavily on me. The unfortunate timing with the elections on the horizon gave me great concern. So, with no other information other than my own personal experiences, I began navigating my thoughts as I anxiously awaited the support material for this item. At the forefront of my thoughts was a meeting I was called to on January 6th, 2020. When I received the call, I was having dinner with a friend visiting from Germany who I had not seen in many years. But I was told the matter was an emergency in nature, and so I dismissed myself and left for City Hall. When I arrived, Member Bridges was just leaving the office, and I walked in to see the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk present. Never had I been called to such a meeting before, and assumed the matter to be dire. The emergency? An agenda item being requested by the mayor. I was told that it sought to hire outside counsel to represent the city in the ongoing investigation of an OML complaint filed by former council member Peggy Levitt. Though I was never given the title for review, nor had it explicitly read to me, I was presented with a litany of concerns. Chief among them were violations of our charter, lack of clarity, and the potential for individual members of council to be found criminally liable. I was told seeking outside counsel would be paramount to interfering with an ongoing investigation. Doing so would likely result in criminal penalties with onerous fines and expulsion from office. I was shaken. As confusing and concerning as this all was, I was comforted by the fact that in the room with me represented decades of experience. They told me they had mine and the city's best interest at heart. After getting home, I began reviewing our city charter and Nevada open meeting law in search of language that I had previously missed, language to support the claims made. I found no such language. I then recalled some advice from pool pack training and reached out to fellow representatives who I knew had familiarity with open meeting law and NRS. Each was astonished by the situation I described, not by the nature of the mayor's requested item, but rather the nebulous warnings that I had been fed. Then this question was posed to me. What happens when this happens to me regarding an agenda item that I feel is important for the council to consider? For those who might be curious, this was the mayor's requested agenda item in its entirety. For possible action, retention of a special counsel by city council to advise council members in matters pertaining to open meeting law violation allegations and prepare and submit any responses that may be necessary or appropriate. The special counsel may provide advice to member of the council or perform other actions necessary with regard to pending allegations of open meeting law violation allegations at the time the council is retained. Now, having read the requested agenda title in question, having the opportunity to compare my experiences with those of the mayors in the transcript that was provided, one thing is clear. I was being gaslit by the very people I had entrusted to advise and counsel me. But a lot has transpired in the last year. I have worked hard to put much of these transgressions behind me in the interest of moving forward in a productive manner for this city. I worked hard to set aside my differences, as to show respect for our appointeds, and to continue to show deference to the opinions of our appointeds. Yet still, mountains were regularly made out of molehills. I have spent a great amount of time trying to untangle why this was. I mean, after all, I've only been here with the city council for just over a year and a half now. Ms. Crum has been here for over a decade and a half. So when I saw a letter in her defense in the Boulder City Review, penned by some of the most influential members of our community who worked with her throughout that time, who perhaps know her best, I took note. They described the clerk as one of the remaining checks and balances against this council, the last layer of protection between this council and the rights of citizens. It may sound like a heroic position, but unfortunately it is not the role of a city clerk. What they described were powers not granted to the office of city clerk by our charter. In fact, any action taken by any appointed official who uses their office to undermine or otherwise deter duly given direction by council has committed an egregious abuse of authority that should never be tolerated. This is not a position I have ever wished to be in. I came into this office believing we would all have the ability to set aside our personal differences, our personal ideologies, and move forward with the people's work. And nevertheless, here we are. I believe we all have room to grow, and we all have the ability to learn from our mistakes. But actions have consequences, and often those consequences can be uncomfortable to confront. But the consequences of ignoring such behavior are far, far worse. It would amount to tacit permission to allow this type of behavior to continue. Many may never understand the seriousness of what was allowed to occur in the days and months leading up to these emergency meetings on January 6th and 7th and the days that followed. The jeopardy that it placed the city in. I'm only fully coming to terms with it myself at this time. Know that I have given this a tremendous amount of thought. I have reflected on the implications that it will have on our city and the lives such decisions will undoubtedly affect. The decision I make tonight is one that I truly believe to be in the best interest of our city.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this agenda item? Councilmember Hoskins?
Thank you, Mayor. I was appointed to council on November the 18th, 2019, and I participated in a December the 10th, 2019 council meeting. Then on January the 6th, 2020, I was requested to attend an unplanned emergency meeting in the city manager's office. At that time, I was very new to council. At this meeting, the first statement from the city manager was, "I'm sure you know the reason for this meeting." And my response was, "No, I don't have the slightest idea." Staff stated an individual submitted an open meeting law violation to the Attorney General's office. The open meeting law complaint concerned a criminal violation against Mayor McManus and Tracy Folda and just a violation by Claudia Bridges. The mayor wanted to include an item on the agenda. The city clerk, the city manager, and the city attorney all warned me that I could be charged with criminal intent if I agreed to include the mayor's request item on the next agenda. I had no idea what the city clerk was referring to, since I had not received any documentation that reflected such. It was evident that the city clerk was very upset and aggressive. She stated if she had to include this item, she would resign. And the city manager and the city attorney said, "We cannot have you quitting." Those were not the exact words, but similar. Once again, the city clerk explained that I could be charged with criminal intent because I was aware of what the mayor wanted to include on the agenda, and I knew it was against the rules. So that is intent. I was not aware of anything at this time. I was alone in this meeting with three of them. As a new council member, I was not familiar with the process. Much later, I requested an agenda concerning the termination of the Stantex report, and no other member of the council were required to agree with my request. A further request for my earlier concern as to why the council members were involved in the mayor's request. I could not understand why we were being asked to okay what the mayor wanted to put on the agenda. These actions were clearly a scare tactic, and they were trying to force me to succumb to their wishes. I was surprised that they all continued to threaten me with criminal intent. It appeared that the city clerk was the instigator of this threat because she prepares the agenda, and she kept insisting she would not include the item on the agenda. 4 times I requested a copy of the mayor's request. I kept telling the city clerk I had not received this document, and she kept insisting I had. She implied I was not telling the truth. Finally, she looked at her computer and realized she had not forwarded the documentation to me. I felt like I was being interrogated, threatened, and harassed for something I had no previous knowledge. The city clerk stated my sentence could be removal from office and a fine. I told them I did not take intimidation lightly. I would not allow them to accuse me of something when I was not guilty. Then came the discussion about whether I should have a copy of the document they claimed that I had already received. I could not believe this was happening. At the end of the meeting, the city clerk asked the city attorney if she had to give me a copy. He said she would eventually get a copy, so go ahead and give her a copy. I soon found out why the city clerk did not want me to have a copy. After carefully reading the mayor's request, I found the staff had not been truthful with me. The item the mayor requested to be on the agenda, and I think Council Member Adams already read it, so it was about a special meeting concerning the open meeting law, and I won't repeat that. The city attorney was preparing an answer to the Attorney General's office concerning the alleged allegations which concerned the city attorney. I was not in favor and wrote a statement to the city attorney that I thought he should recuse himself. Therefore, I thought the mayor had total justification for requesting this item be included in the agenda. We needed outside counsel. The city clerk has accused the mayor of threatening and intimidation, and that is what the city clerk, the city manager, and the city attorney were doing to me. No, the accusations involving the mayor have just been addressed and no violation occurred. I repeat, no violations were found. Recap. I was called to an emergency meeting, missed my dinner engagement, to discuss something that I had not received a copy of, threatened with criminal intent, ridiculed, intimidated, harassed, and made out to be a liar, all by the city clerk, city attorney, and city manager. The city clerk stated once again that I could be removed from office and pay a fine. As a council member, I am their supervisor. Is this not the other way around? I immediately returned home and memorialized the meeting and typed my notes. I was not going to include my experience of that meeting in tonight's presentation, but I felt you needed to understand the severity of this meeting. Thoughts going through my mind at that point were, I had held a very high security clearance rating throughout my career, and now I was about to lose my reputation. Was Chief Shea going to be at the next meeting and handcuff me? If an individual I supervised had spoken to me in this way, they would have found themselves looking for a job the next day due to their unprofessional behavior. The next morning, I contacted an attorney, and these are some of the answers to my questions. They stated, the city clerk, city attorney, and city manager should not have conducted such a meeting and should not have threatened and intimidated you. If a council member requests an agenda item, and the city clerk should then accommodate that request. A city council member has the right to seek legal counsel if they feel they have a need. Several months later, the Attorney General's office determined there was no open meeting law violation, and the agenda item did not appear on the agenda. This meeting occurred over a year ago, and had I received an apology, I would have accepted it, but there was no apology that came forward. And I believe that the city attorney overstepped her authority. And other complaints that I've received recently, since this is been happening, I received a call concerning the city clerk's salary. The individual states that it is $160,000 plus. She works 4 days per week, has insurance benefits, and retirement. They stated they expect more professionalism from a person making that much money, receiving such benefits, and that they should be terminated. Several individuals have written the pros and cons for ballot questions, and they've complained that the city clerk then rewrites them. And so maybe this is the reason we do not get volunteers for those positions. There are other issues I will not elaborate on due to legal concerns. One other item is denial of public records and the time for receiving the documents. In conclusion, this entire issue has become a game, a strategy, or a narrative. And it is played by treating at least one council member differently than they do others. Doing this causes doubt in the public's eye and makes one wonder who's telling the truth. Possibly they are all telling the truth because their experiences were different. I take no delight in this process. Unfortunately, it is a requirement of being a city member, council member. The issue of the city clerk's professionalism is not new. This issue has been a topic of discussion for many years by the public. I've known the city clerk for several years. I've dealt with her as a council member and a member of the public. Over the past several years, I have been concerned with her actions and professionalism, especially during council meetings. Since I've been on council, several issues have troubled me with her demeanor and the steps she has taken dealing with council issues. Individuals can have years of service and vast knowledge of their position. If their performance is not professional, beneficial, or in the organization's best interest, then all of that experience and knowledge serves little purpose. Several individuals have cautioned or warned me that I must be careful making this decision since I'm running for council. Individuals have stated that I can be harassed or I could be sued. Whichever way I decide, it could either help or harm my campaign. But I do not make decisions based on time and service, knowledge, personalities, or whether or not it's in my best interest. I make decisions based on facts and what is best for Boulder City, and I make my decisions independently with my own mind and no one else's. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I guess my experience has been quite different. I wrote a lot and I divided it into four parts, and that was her character, her charges, my opinion, and conclusion. I believe Lorraine Crum has an impeccable character and work ethic. I'm talking about my experience from being in rooms with her and talking and asking questions and asking for information. She's a significant asset to the city and has been for over 10 years. My experience is that she's extremely helpful and has directed me to the sources I've needed. She's well respected by staff and many members of the community, and I believe she has faithfully, industrially, and to the best of her ability, performed all of her duties. Like I said, my experience sounds quite different. She's being accused, I believe, of interfering with the mayor's wishes and agenda. For many months, I've watched the process of accumulating evidence to prove her incompetence and find reasons for termination. And tonight, I feel we've been presented with over 400 pages. And it started out with her support that there needed to be a change of title. This all started with a change of title on an agenda item in October of 2019. She was willing to work on the title. She was part of the discussion to shore up the title. It was not about removing anything from the agenda. The issue was the title, and it was presented to me by the city attorney, and I had to make a decision on that. It had nothing to do with her. Much of the evidence referred actually to Peggy Levitt's, and then going forward, much of the evidence actually refers to Peggy Levitt's OML violation complaint. Another issue that I read about was a discussion about the median strip on bristlecone. She was not, and this was words I found in the documentation, dictating to council is accused, but was reiterating the street design standards were backup material and not part of the RFP. She was accused of dictating. My perspective was that it was with the purview of this job of this clerk or attorney to give advice that they believe would be beneficial. No, we don't have to follow it. However, at times it is warranted. Oh, that and several clerical errors, X's instead of a number on a resolution in 2016, and then neglecting to add the COVID-19 directive in a time when things were very crazy and very busy, and changes in the way we performed our business into the agenda last May. And I also believe that it was a situation with the injunction that there could not be a special meeting, and she communicated that to the mayor, who wanted to go ahead with it anyways. None of these issues, including those that were discussed at that night about the agenda item, appeared to be for her own personal benefit, nor were they intentional. I believe her work has passed the test of reasonableness, at least to me. I've never been threatened. I've never been demeaned. I've always felt I was given the information that I needed to get to make the decisions I made. She does her best to make sure we can get our work done and get it done according to the accepted procedures and processes deemed by council. In addition, she was entitled to a performance review. Any time along this entire period since I was elected, a performance review by council, which to my knowledge never occurred. Evaluations, goals, objectives are normally a part of the employment process, which have not occurred. Yes, we can terminate her at will. The point is, should we? My opinion, I do not. I really do not believe that Lou Crum should have her contract terminated. Running her office is a big job, and there are many moving parts. We're in the midst of an election cycle. The world has changed with COVID-19, and we have a mayor who, having been found to not have violated any city policy as a result of words and actions, still has people on edge. Mrs. Crum's job is to use her best judgment, conduct herself ethically through her best efforts, and to take care of the responsibilities of her office. She does this. She's a professional municipal employee. We are elected officials who rely upon her knowledge and experience. I support her. In conclusion, I want a city attorney who will warn me about a potential violation when presented with an agenda item. I don't want them to worry about whether the problem turns out to not be a problem, whether they will be penalized. I want a city manager who runs the city. And I want a city clerk who's knowledgeable enough about rules and regulations of meetings and records retention, proficient with the process of writing agenda titles, and who doesn't have to worry about making an occasional mistake, and who can admit and fix her errors. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Folda?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the words that were expressed by Councilman Adams and Councilwoman Hoskins very much speak to how I'm feeling right now. I don't have very eloquent words and way to speak this. This has been a very emotional item to consider. And I'm trying to move the emotion out of it. And there has been a lot of support for the city clerk. There has been a rallying of her friends and family and previous council and members that have worked with her. But what I have to speak to is her employment and what I've seen. When I first came onto council, summer of 2019, I met with the city clerk as I get to know you in introductory. I've only been in the city clerk's office a handful of times since being on council, rarely in the city council hall at all after COVID happened. And so there's very little physical interactions that we've had. I do recall, though, one time while in her office, I was asking some questions, and she had to ask the deputy clerk for help with assisting with the answers to those questions. I thought that was a little bit odd. Moving forward, though, came in October, the mayor's request to finally clarify the questions that the citizens have had of whether or not there was a charter issue with some of the contracts of the appointed members of this city. So what was done was to look for an outside opinion on the matter, to clarify it all. And as soon as that was done, it was reacted very adversely by the appointed involved. It was assumed automatically that we were out to get them, to fire them, when in my view, we were just trying to clarify what the citizens have been asking about ever since the contract was created. The contract was created as the city attorney was the acting city attorney for the city, who was acting on behalf of the city and himself at the time the contract was written, and which could be an ethics question as well. So the item went on. What we saw was a weaponizing of the open meeting law. Very publicly, former members of council came and reiterated almost exactly what the city attorney had said to us during that time. And what followed was a filing of an open meeting law complaint by former city councilwoman Peggy Levitt. So we didn't find out about that until late December, and when we all had this emergency meeting in January. When I went into the meeting, my meeting was asked to come in by the city manager, Alnoyola. It just said, I need to come in and we can discuss some things. Okay, well, we're going to discuss some things. So we started our discussion, and a few minutes later entered the city clerk and city attorney. I felt very cornered, very unaware and unprepared for that type of a meeting. That meeting went on for 2 hours. When it was very clear to them that I brought up the ethical questions, that the city attorney would refuse to disclose his pecuniary interest in this item. He repeatedly said he didn't have to. So it went on for 2 hours. And I'm still shaken from that meeting and that interaction. We were told, similar to what's been repeated here already, that we are at risk, where we look and appear by the mayor's question to have this item on the agenda to be interfering with an agenda or an investigation. And if we did go ahead with the item, then the public would know about this open meeting law violation. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to us, there was already a request, or it was given by the city clerk to the media already. Also unbeknownst to us, that there was an opinion made by a labor attorney through our own HR that actually stated, yes, there were questions with the charter and there were discrepancies with the contract. That information was withheld for us until after we replied to the open meeting law violation. When I asked why this was done, I was given excuses of holidays, vacation. It was held for over 18 days, I believe. This mistrust got so deep that I asked the city attorney, Steve Morris, if he in fact helped write the open meeting law complaint against city council. He said he had not, but he was aware that Rod Woodbury was involved with its writing, our former mayor. This kind of issues continue going on with the same players involved, our former city council members and former city mayors. This has left our employees very confused and stuck in the middle of us versus them, and where do they fall into all this? This kind of conversation has not been discussed openly by the city council, because at the time of the firing of the city attorney and city manager, they had already filed a lawsuit against us, had gone into hiding for 3 weeks, and any information that I gave to the city clerk during that time was immediately forwarded to them. Although they had already recused themselves, had filed a lawsuit against us, that information continued to go to them as if they were employees who needed to be involved in the matter. I feel that this city clerk has unequally administrated rules and procedures when items have been asked to be put on agenda. I have asked for certain items to go on and been told different rules and excuses why it couldn't go on. I feel like this very much ruined the agenda item I had for the airport hangars and caused what we have now at the airport. I've had to ask multiple times for the same agenda item to be on. Either it's left off and I have to wait for the next city council meeting. I continue to wait and follow the rules that the city clerk comes up with each time, while staff has items come back and forth between committees and commissions, not following the dates and rules that have been applied to this council. Anytime an error or correction has been suggested to the city clerk, I've been given replied of excuses, blame to other members of her office, or disregarded it completely. This is the guardian of our public records. I have lost trust in how she's using those records, how she's administrating them, and how she is, I feel, assisting in an agenda that is organized propaganda campaign against this council ever since it was started. Sorry, this is obviously not something I ever wanted to participate in. I don't enjoy this at all, but I think it's important to stand up for what is right, even when it's hard, even when you have to be alone, even when you have to walk through blowhorns being blown in your face. This is a disservice to city council. Some of the comments tonight were saying that this will ruin our city. In fact, I feel it's the opposite. I think it'll finally have the ability for council to move forward with things that need and are important to our citizens and be able to discuss them at our city council meetings as per law. That is, I feel we've had a great change with our acting city manager and our acting city attorney that have helped finally bring about the questions and issues that city council has brought forward, not to fulfill some agenda, some secret initiative, but to help move forward this city in a positive direction where citizens are at the top of the organization chart once again, because that's what's been missing with staff, is that they will not take, this is former appointed staff, felt that they were the boss of the city council. In fact, they treated us like they were our boss. And I'm not trying to have some power control or something like that. I joined this council to put my head down and to work hard. And I've been attacked ever since. Even, the paper has reported stuff on me before I was even sworn in, that I had some ultimate agenda. If that was true, if we were really being controlled by some Facebook page, then this staff would have been fired immediately as council came on board. Why weren't they? Does anyone ever ask that question? Maybe because this council has been trying to work with them for over 1.5 years, and it's just not getting any better. I keep waiting and waiting for this clerk to come around and to not show her bias towards and hate towards members of this council, and it hasn't happened. Those are my feelings on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Madam City Clerk, you have an opportunity if you would like to speak, or if you have a representative you would like to speak for you.
No, I will speak for myself, and let me just start out by saying I will address all of the issues that the council has brought forth tonight. I feel like I am in the twilight zone, but I will begin by stating that during the past month, I have had ample time to consider how, or even if, I would respond to the efforts to terminate my employment with the city, the hesitation being that at the forefront of my consideration is always what is best for the city. The city has been my second home for over 15 years, and the employees have been my second family. The last thing I would ever want is to bring embarrassment to the city and represent the city in a poor manner. But after careful consideration, I've been left with no choice but to discuss what this item is really about, which has nothing to do with performance issues and everything to do with retaliation. In the past 15 years, I have received nothing but stellar positive reviews by multiple councils, split councils, and not only as the city clerk, but as the deputy city clerk. I have not been reviewed by this council, nor have I been advised by any member of this council in a review or individually that there are concerns regarding my performance. It is undisputed the council has the authority to hire and fire appointed officials for any reason or no reason. Under normal circumstances, if my contract were terminated without cause, there would be nothing to say. However, because of what has occurred over the course of the past 20 months, and the fact that the agenda item includes a resolution to terminate without cause, but includes 407 pages of backup material without a narrative to accompany the item, I must speak out. This is another ambush orchestrated by the mayor, done in violation of the open meeting law, and has denied me of my right to due process and a fair and impartial hearing. You have all ambushed me again tonight. It is also interesting to note that although I am confused about the basis for this agenda item, there seems to be no confusion whatsoever from members of the BCCA regarding not only the point of the backup material, but also what the plan of the council is, which I will be submitting into the record. It's a screenshot. The post 4 days ago by Laura Pfizer, who is the co-founder of the BCCA with Councilmember Tracy Folda, outlines her summary of these reasons and states, quote, "I agree with and understand the decision they plan to make," end quote. This would indicate the council is deliberating or making plans outside of an open public meeting, which again is a violation of the open meeting law. What is also interesting is that after the draft agenda was sent out to staff and council, the only member who contacted me was Councilmember Claudia Bridges. She seemed shocked and unaware of why this item was on the agenda. So although I will briefly address the points or the plan that has been deliberated outside of an open public meeting, these so-called points are nothing but a red herring to disguise obvious retaliation. With the backup material that relates to the 2017 open meeting law violation and the resumes, this council was not even in office during this time, so why an event that happened 4 years ago is being brought forth in consideration of termination is suspect. But to clear up confusion, yes, there was an unwillful open meeting law violation due to a lack of communication between departments. At no time prior to the interviews of the prospective candidates at the special meeting did the city clerk's office have the resumes or withhold the resumes. With that being said, should I have checked to determine if the council had been provided the resumes and should the meeting have been stopped? Yes, 100%. And I accept full responsibility for not checking. in the thousands or hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings I have done and agendas I have prepared, that was the first open meeting law violation that I had ever received in the course of providing materials for hundreds of meetings throughout 15 years of service. And quite frankly, that was an ambush too, with that I won't even address. With the issue regarding the violation for the mayor's item requested to hire outside counsel, what has been discussed tonight and how those conversations have been characterized are blatant lies. And I have emails that I'll also be submitting into the record. My issue with the item, each appointed official had their issue. Mine was only that it was past the deadline, not of my rules. These are rules of the city council that you have adopted. And I'm just going to read a portion of what I told the mayor when he says I refused to put that agenda item on. That is not the case at all. On January 8th, 2020, I said, to clarify, although you expressed, this is my email to the mayor, to clarify, although you expressed your desire to add an agenda item to the January 14th agenda on January 2nd, the title was not provided to me, and I was unaware of its nature until January 6th, 2019 at 3:40 p.m. I'm sorry, that should have been said 2020. 11 days after the deadline. These are not my deadlines. These are the council's deadlines. I have expressed my concerns regarding the time frame for submitting agenda titles, as well as the process of city council responding to the completion of an open investigation. The agenda has been posted and the backup material for the agenda packet was due yesterday at noon. We are well beyond the deadline for titles and also beyond submission for backup material. I reiterated my concern yesterday with the city manager and city attorney. They also provided their own reasons, legal and administrative. I didn't provide legal reasons. I provided my reasons, which was following the deadlines for my job, which is the agenda. The issues you refer to in your memo are legal issues, and City Attorney Morris addressed these issues in our meeting yesterday. At this point, my answer to you is the same as it was yesterday. If you wish to proceed with your agenda title, please advise me to amend the posted agenda by adding your title. If this is your direction, I will proceed. So I did offer to put the item on, and after being badgered over and over to provide a legal opinion, which I'm not qualified to provide, he kept saying I wasn't responsive to the issues. I'm not going to respond to legal issues. Furthermore, he asked me to withhold information on the agenda item that led to it. He said, Lorene, I do want to confirm that the wording that is to be included for the agenda is the title and the city charter section pertaining to the city attorney. The memo itself is not to be included as it does contain information that may infringe on the confidentiality of the complaint filed by former Councilwoman Levitt. My response was, the memo would be backup material and is not considered confidential. Not only would the memo be provided, but the various correspondence that led to the addition of this item would also be provided. In the interest of full transparency, it is important to include this information not only for the public, but for the other members of the City Council so they are able to make an informed decision. And I remember during that time that Councilmember Folda had an issue on a different item saying that if she would have had that information, there may have been a different result. The mayor ultimately decided to withdraw his request. He kept baiting me to answer legal questions in writing that the city attorney had already addressed in the meeting he secretly recorded between myself, the city manager, and city attorney, which took place on January 7th, 2020. My issue, again, with the item pertained to the fact that the item was submitted extremely late, which does not allow staff and other members of council to respond in a manner which best serves the city. With respect to the cancellation of the meeting of May 12th, yes, this is true. This meeting was canceled due to very specific language related to public comment required by the governor's directive due to the pandemic. Again, in the hundreds of meetings I have prepared agendas for, this was the first time a meeting has had to be canceled. And again, I accepted full responsibility and I apologized to council and staff. During this pandemic, creating agendas requires twice the work and twice the time due to these requirements. This was an honest mistake and an oversight due to an extremely large workload and numerous issues going on during that time. If making an honest mistake and canceling one meeting out of the hundreds held during 15 years is grounds for termination, City Hall would be empty, and firing somebody for a mistake only creates an environment where employees are fearful and likely to make more mistakes. If these were truly the reasons for termination of my employment, I would have to ask why termination was not sought earlier. These are allegations that occurred over a year ago. None of the members of the council has ever once discussed these issues with me, and as a matter of fact, since taking office, with the exception of Councilmember Bridges and one meeting with Councilmember Folda regarding the city code, none of the council have ever even come into my office to have a conversation regarding this matter or any other matter during the past 20 months. So what has happened since then, making the timing of these accusations suspicious? Claims were filed for a hostile work environment, an investigation was started in June of 2020, and efforts to terminate my employment are retaliation. And the fact that tonight the script is being flipped to state that the council was treated with hostility is one more example of the sabotage and gaslighting that has occurred here in the last 20 months. It's like living in an episode of The Hunger Games. Furthermore, the person who is the subject of these complaints is the very person who served me the notice 4 times while the investigation was still open. This is clear retaliation. It has become public knowledge an internal investigation has been conducted at City Hall regarding various claims of a hostile work environment and bullying by numerous employees. During the investigation, it was made very clear that any employee who had filed a complaint or cooperated in the investigation was protected from retaliation. Employees are required to take training regarding bullying in the workplace offered by Pool Pact, and some examples include the following. Falsely accusing someone of an error not actually made. Well, we've seen that tonight. Discounting the person's thoughts or feelings during meetings. Exhibiting presumably uncontrollable mood swings in front of the group. We've seen that numerous times by the mayor. Making up own rules on the fly that even he or she does not follow. That is true as well because the rules change according to who you are. Disregarding satisfactory or exemplary quality of completed work despite evidence. Starting or failing to stop destructive rumor or gossip about the person. And encouraging people to turn against the person being tormented. There are more, but the examples I just provided have all occurred on a regular basis, and are well documented. But one incident in particular caused a great deal of alarm and concern. The city clerk's office received an email between the mayor and a resident as a result of a public records request on November 18th, 2019. Upon receiving the email, the deputy city clerk read the records and immediately notified me of her concern. I immediately notified the city attorney and the city manager. There was a public meeting occurring on that day, and I was concerned this person would be in attendance. A portion of the email reads as follows: I will rattle Bryce, Morris, Tammy, Shay, Brock. I have never owned weapons. Reluctantly and confidentially, I have gone shooting with Joseph as a pure social interaction. The back door to the chamber is used. I never checked it for a guard by the gazebo. Claudia and Rod use it. Anyone could place a weapon in a trash can. I could hide a weapon behind a large belt buckle that I am asked to remove. The guard standing in the hall by the clock, facing the door, would be shot first. I'm not suggesting an occurrence, just pointing out absurdities. For myself, I'd weigh a bug sweep weekly. Further in the email, he states, quote, I'm going to remove staff at an agreed rate, end quote. Quote, this could be very nice or get much worse, end quote. This statement, along with the hundreds of harassing and threatening emails received by this person, caused great concern regarding the safety of employees. The behavior was continuing to escalate, and employees were so frightened that night they were walked to their cars by police officers. But what was equally alarming is the mayor's failure to notify anybody at the city of the threatening email. The mayor was well aware of the concerns of staff because he was a member of council when there was a meeting in May 2018 to discuss the threatening and harassing behavior of this person. As a result of the May 2018 meeting, the city began using a metal detector and security. Furthermore, this person had made several references in public and in emails that he had met with Mayor McManus, he was working for Mayor McManus, and he was conducting research for Mayor McManus. On January 22nd, 2020, the city held a non-meeting meeting to receive information from the city attorney on pending and/or threatened litigation. And during discussions, it was shared an email had been received describing how this person could hide a weapon prior to a meeting and who would be shot first. Mayor McManus asked me who the email had been sent to when it had been sent to him. He then questioned me why I hadn't notified him of his own email that I didn't even know about until it was received as a public record. And his final reaction was irritation towards staff and stating, quote, I will have all of my emails from this person forwarded to the city clerk, city manager, and city attorney, end quote. And the mayor suggested this person had health issues. This is one of many, many examples of how when discussing difficult matters, there are not appropriate responses. There is defensiveness, misplaced blame, and gaslighting. The attacks on staff by certain members of this council and the few members of the public they answer to are unprecedented, and it would take hours to discuss the numerous examples of harassment, intimidation, job sabotage, and bullying, not only towards staff, but to city volunteers, local business owners, and contractors. There have been fake email accounts, secret recordings, calls from family members of council members identifying themselves as the leader of the LDS Church to accuse me of hiding employees and calling for a full investigation. There were calls tonight from Laura Pfizer saying she had sent in a statement which hadn't been read. We have received no such statement. We have received, people would never believe what has gone on here in the last 20 months. For the first time in the city's history, we are unable to fill vacant seats of our volunteer committees because people are concerned about retaliation, leaving the only applicants those that the mayor and certain members of council approve of. Employees are now suffering from anxiety attacks, are seeking counseling, have had to see cardiologists and neurologists, all related to stress that began with the seating of this council. And then just to address a couple of the items that were brought forth tonight, which of course did not allow me to prepare properly. But I will say this, with respect to Mayor McManus's alleged treatment of him when he served on the Historic Preservation Committee, have no response to that. But all I can tell you is that I have never scolded any single volunteer in my career. I don't scold people. I try to educate, I try to share knowledge, and I try to keep people out of trouble from violating the open meeting law. And it's just another example of the mischaracterization of any time staff tries to help this council. It is flipped around like we are dictators, or that we don't have the best intention of the city at heart. With respect to Councilmember Hoskins, I do not make $160,000 a year. And with regard to the ballot questions, that's just a bald-faced lie, because throughout that process, I'm not allowed by law to change the content. Do I offer grammatical changes to help it read better, or do I reject statements because they're not fact? Yes, I do. That is my job under the law. I don't do this alone. I work in consultation with the city attorney. I also work with the department heads. So I don't rewrite anything. I reject statements that are not based in fact. And furthermore, all the ballot question committee members are required to sign off on the ballot questions, approving them. So they are approved by all members of the ballot question committee members. So once again, that is an attempt to smear me and to sabotage me and to ruin my reputation. Councilmember Fulda, I don't make up my own rules. It's the council's rules once again. And your bizarre statement that I had to ask the deputy city clerk a question as some type of justification that I don't know my job duties is so bizarre to me, because we ask each other questions all day, every day. We bounce things off of each other to make sure that we're on the same page, so that we are providing the best service. So, that shouldn't be looked at as a detriment. That should be applauded. And I would like the example of when I ever blamed my staff for anything, because I think they're sitting here, and maybe they'd be happy to speak on it. I think they'd be the first to tell you that in any time that there has been any problems in the city clerk's office, I have never, ever blamed them for anything. I have accepted I take any blame and I give them credit. And I think they would be the first ones to tell you that. So I have no idea what you are talking about. And it is very sad to me that some people in this town have vehemently advocated for the firing of 3 appointed officials during a pandemic, people we have never met or have any idea who they are, people we have never worked with or had any interaction with as public employees or socially. When former City Attorney Morris was terminated, there were people in this community who actually drove by his home with his children there and honked and cheered because he was terminated. A man that has lived here his entire life, who employees liked and respected, and who did nothing to deserve the discriminatory treatment he received. I can't imagine a more vile, malicious act, which clearly was encouraged by the retaliatory acts of this council. Boulder City needs to ask itself what kind of community we want to be. And in closing, I also want to address this whole me watching hockey game, me being on my phone. First of all, yes, I'm on my phone. I send myself reminders when I hear things in council meetings so I can remember to do them in the morning. I answer emails. My job at a council meeting is to take minutes and to to prepare my reports, to provide my reports. I have never not been prepared coming to a council meeting. And so if I'm on my phone, maybe I'm sending a text to my children, but I'm likely working. This is not my council meeting. It's the city council's meeting. And with respect to me watching hockey, I have never watched television, a game, or anything other than the packet on my iPad. And quite frankly, anybody who's a hockey fan would know that the games can't even be streamed. So in closing, I want to say to the people who do know me, who have worked with me, people I have met working here that will be lifelong friends, people who I have had the honor of serving and the pleasure of meeting. I'm so grateful for the 15 years I've spent at the city, and words could never express my gratitude to all of you. The past month has been traumatic, to say the least, and the outpouring of support, hundreds and hundreds of phone calls and text messages from members of the community and throughout the state, and employees from every single department coming into my office to offer support, have shown me the place that Boulder City really is. Every single act of support and kindness you have shown me will never be forgotten. And even knowing the outcome of tonight, I would do it all again, because it was worth it to have the opportunity to work with the best employees anybody could ever hope for, especially my two favorite girls always, Tammy and Tina. We have never had a bad day in over 10 years together until today, and I have no further comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else you wish to speak on your behalf?
Nope.
Thank you. Any responses from members of council? All right. My request this evening is not the result of some alleged vendetta or outside influences forcing changes upon me. It is the result of observing and experiencing repeated lack of competencies and deficiencies that were not short-term mistakes. I've heard from the other members of council. I've seen no effort or attempt by Ms. Crum to correct the type of egregious action she has taken. To the contrary, the actions continue to provide a disservice to our city. I will move to approve Resolution 7238, which will terminate the employment agreement number 10-1310 for Ms. Crum as City Clerk of the city. Anyone wishing to second the motion?
I'll second, Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The vote is 4-1 with Councilmember Bridges dissenting. I would also then move to approve Resolution 7239, which will provide for a severance payment to Ms. Crum with regard to the termination of this contract, and that was detailed in the contract, amounting to 3 months compensation. Is there anyone wishing to second that motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is unanimous then. And with that, that concludes item number 10. And we will take a 10-minute recess at this time.